Welcome to my notes on variables on both sides, and specifically today we're going to be looking at ones that contain grouping symbols. So be sure you are on grade 8-3 of your notes. Okay, so when we have problems like this with the number in front of parentheses, we call those grouping symbols or parentheses, and the first step we're going to want to do is distribute. And then basically the steps are going to be the same as we started with yesterday. So the next step is going to be to combine like terms. And I always like to combine the variables first. Combine like terms, take care of the variables first. Then after we take care of the variables, we're going to combine like terms and take care of the numbers. Okay, step 4, we need to isolate the variable. And last step is to check. Okay, now we're going to look at example number 1. It says 1/3 parentheses 18 plus 12x equals 6 parentheses 2x minus 7. So we're going to distribute the 1/3 to the 18, and when you take a third of 18, you end up with 6 plus a third of 12x is 4x. And then 6 times 2x is 12x. And 6 times 7 is 42. And I'm going to leave a minus sign there. Now, I always like to deal with positive variables. Okay, so I'm going to move the 4x so that I make the problem just a little bit easier because now I'm not dealing with any negatives. So 4 minus 4 cancels, bring down the 6. 12x minus 4x is 8x. And then we have the minus 42. Okay, so now when I have my two-step here, I like to circle the variable and draw the t. So the opposite or inverse of subtracting 42 is adding 42. So the 42's will cancel. Add 42 to this side. 6 plus 42 is 48 equals 8x. And now the opposite of multiplication is division, so I'm going to divide both sides by 8. 8 divided by 8 is a 1 in disguise. So, of course, x will equal 6. Now, if I want to double check my answer, I can plug it back into the equation here. Now, when I'm plugging this into my calculator to double check it, you have to make sure you put the 1/3 in parentheses, and then make sure you put this in parentheses. And then when you check this side, make sure you put 6 and then what's inside the parentheses. And make sure you close your parentheses. Otherwise, it's not going to check. And you only have to put parentheses around this number out here if it's a fraction. Otherwise, it will check just perfectly. Okay, number 2, we're going to distribute on both sides. So 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 5y is 15y. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. And 2 times 4y is 8y. I'm going to put plus 8y. Okay, now I want to stick with a positive variable, so I'm going to subtract 8y from both sides. The 8y's will cancel. Bring down my 18. And 15y minus 8y is positive 7, so I'm going to write plus 7y equals negative 10. Now, circle your variable and draw your t. Now I want to get rid of 18, so I have to subtract 18 to make it equal 0. 18 minus 18 cancels, and I left with 7y equals negative 10 minus 18. Be careful here. This is actually negative 28. And the opposite of multiplication is division, so we're going to divide both sides by 7. And the answer, of course, is y equals negative 4. And of course, when you're doing these on your own, you are going to want to be sure that you check your answers, because it's very easy to make a mistake when doing these. Okay, let's look at number 3. So let me just clear the screen here and scroll down to number 3. Okay. Now this one is going to look just a little bit different, because now when we distribute, after we distribute, we're going to have something that comes after it. So 8 times b. Now remember we talked about this. If there's no coefficient for a variable, then we can assume there's a 1 there. So this is 1b. So 8 times 1b is 8b. And 8 times 1 is 8. And then after we distribute, now we've got to put that plus 4 equals. Now we got to distribute here. 3 times 2b is 6b. And 3 times 8 is 24, and there's a minus sign in between them. Now, I have a minus 16 at the end. Now here's what I do in problems like this. When there are like terms on the same side, I don't do the inverse, okay? I just combine them as is. So I'm going to take a look at this, and what is 8 plus 4? 12. So 8b plus 12 equals, now we have, now be sure you box in this minus sign, because that tells me that that 24 is actually negative 24. So this is saying negative 24 minus 16, which is negative 40. So since it's negative 40, I'm going to write minus 40. Okay, now I'm going to move the 6b, leaving me a positive variable. And let me just say something about this positive variable here. I am not saying that you can't move the 8b and deal with negatives. It just makes it more difficult, and it leaves the door open for more mistakes when you're dealing with the negatives. Okay? That's all I'm saying. Now, circle your variable, draw your t, and the inverse of adding 12 is subtracting 12. 12's cancel, and we get 2b equals negative 52. The opposite of multiplication is division, so we're going to divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is a 1 in disguise, and b will equal negative 26. Now, just a reminder, when you do these on your own, be sure you are checking your answer. And when you see parentheses, make sure you type the parentheses in using your graphing calculator. Okay, now this side has nothing to distribute, so I'm just going to copy it down. 4e minus 19 equals, now I'm going to distribute on this side, so negative 3e. And negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. But plus negative 12 just doesn't look right. So instead of writing plus negative 12, I know that when I'm adding a negative, it's the same as subtracting a positive. So I'm going to write minus 12. Okay, now I'm going to move negative 3e. So I want to cancel that out from this side. and move it to this side. So these are going to cancel. And 4 plus 3e is 7e minus 19 equals negative 12. Because when I bring down minus 12, I got to remember that it's negative. Circle the variable. And I'm going to do the inverse of subtracting 19, which is adding 19. The 19s, of course, equals 0, so they'll cancel. So 7e equals negative 12 plus 19 is 7. And the opposite of multiplication is division. 7 divided by 7 is a 1 in disguise, so e will equal 1, because 7 divided by 7 is 1. Okay, we have 2 more examples to look at, and then you'll be ready to try some on your own. So, clear this, and let's scroll down to number 5. Okay, we're going to use the distributive property on both sides, so we're going to do 2 times r is 2r minus 2 times 4, which is 8. And we're going to do 5 times r is 5r. And 5 times 7 is 35, and I have the minus sign there. Okay, I'm going to move. Well, now this time I'm going to deal with the negatives because I want you to get some experience dealing with the negatives. So I'm going to subtract 5r. So 5 minus 5 is 0. 2r minus 5r is negative 3r. Bring down the minus 8. And minus 35 is going to be negative 35. Okay, now I'm going to circle my variable and draw my t. And I'm going to add 8 to both sides. The 8s will equal 0. So negative 3r equals negative 35 plus 8 is negative 27. And the opposite of multiplication is division. Now remember, if there's a negative in front of multiplication, then I'm going to divide by a negative. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 3. That is a 1 in disguise. And negative 27 divided by negative 3 is positive 9. Okay, we have made it to our last example. So once again, we have the distributive property. So 8 times x is 8x. 8 times 3 is 24, but there's a minus sign in between them. And we have to put the plus 8 after it. Equals 5x minus 22. Now, like we said before, if there are like terms on the same side, then we have to go ahead and combine them. So we have 8x. Now, remember, there's a minus sign in front of this 24, so it's negative 24 plus 8. Negative 24 plus 8, of course, is negative 16. So because it's negative, I can write minus 16 equals 5x minus 22. Now I'm going to move this so that I can go back to keeping with the positive x's. And 5x minus 5x is 0. 8x minus 5x is 3x minus 16 equals, now remember, minus 22, I'm going to bring it down as negative 22. Circle the variable and draw your t. The inverse of subtracting 16 is adding 16. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides. The 16s will cancel, and 3x will equal negative 22 plus 16 is negative 6. The opposite of multiplication is division. So 3 divided by 3 is a 1 in disguise, and x equals negative 2. Okay, that concludes our grouping notes with variables on both sides. So I hope you learned something, and have a great day.